exactly. But if you take the default scaffolding and apply it to any atomic compilation, even cells, you're able to remove the constraints of things such as the membrane. You're able to move things such as the constraints of the insulation of the myelin strips, and you're able to do it to a point that you're able to have ions as an end point for atomic compilations. If you're able to have that, you're able to have different localities that are variant that wouldn't be represented at the edge of the gravity well of whatever gravity well you would be in, which would actually have its own surface enumeration for our own universe in its entirety. Each gravity well folds space its unique way. Once it folds space, it puts the heaviest particles down, like vinaigrette. The reason it does that is because the curvature of space folds everything in on itself. But in actuality, we're all like gas blowing off from a sun. We're all perpetually expanding at the speed of light as quantum particles. Without gluons, we wouldn't make atomic compilations. Without gluons, we wouldn't make any kind of transaction from one subatomic particle to another. They wouldn't recognize each other. Without across curvatures, which is what we need the mapping system for, which is what this is. The subatomic particle default scaffoldings that you established there can now map out the locality of those particles, because gravity and other fields and forces have a specific numerical value of representation in our physical measurable universe. And then we have specific points of value of representation for these atomic compilations and quantum particles and default scaffolding. Once you have this, you're able to take subatomic particles and quantum particles and isolate those in the digital environment as to where they would be located, and they would have a geometric representation that's isolated for the human awareness that would perpetuate itself. Those have quantum properties that are able to establish a specific rotation, and those have adjacent particles too. You can obtain locality proximity to those adjacent particles by taking an atom. Once you have an atom, you can alter the curvature of these perpetuating particles. And it allows them to be enumerated in different localities. The way you do this is you have a dual bonded electron, a valence electron having ion, such as calcium or sodium. If you bond another ion to it, then you can rotate its vector, a variation from its original position. Then you can ionize a particle, and it will continue on a spin based on the ionization process. But since you have this default scaffolding now, you have an exact numerical value of an exact measurement value as to what's requisite for those ionized processes to be perfect. The problem is, though, you have to get rid of the radiant particles for that specific type of ionization process. You can have a superconductor, or you can have an atomic compilation that has a specific curvature that radiates based on subatomic particle spin, upquark, and downquark variation. When you have the upquark and downquark variation, if you have two upquarks, it's going to radiate out. If you have upquark and downquark, it's going to have an orbital. I wouldn't get that close, bro. Anyway, once you have that geometric representation, you can take it from any point in a person's life. Take those quantum entangled processes and establish the gluonic transition, which is my own theory. My theory is that gluons, which is establishing the original ion, original proton or neutron, can escalate from one portion to another. And once they do, we call it pressurization, or we call it a linear process of electricity going through a platform or our own electrotonic transactions. All right. It has to interact either with one form of gluon that's stable platformed, or that can measure transition of second dimensional lines of property, which allows us to measure the variations within our universe. Or it has to interact with the alternate particle that can maintain the same enumeration temporarily. Either way, we're basically shooting from the beginning of the universe out as a straight line that eventually wraps around itself so many times that it's there again. And in essence, that's kind of like a odd way of looking at it, I guess. But the second dimensional planes, once they represent portions that intersect with other second dimensional planes, they create even more second dimensional planes. So if they create more second dimensional planes, the way they do this is like having two pieces of paper stacked up against each other or intersecting each other. And then having four more along one intersected point. Every single one of those intersecting points now has an adjacent intersecting point. Each one of those create another second dimension because they have references throughout that. And it has to be enumerated, a line has to be enumerated on a second dimension or a third. It cannot be enumerated on the first dimension, and that means it creates the second dimension within and of itself. All right, the subatomic particles that are represented on these second dimensional lines of property within default scaffoldings can have a direct routed tracing system that has an angular variation from nothing all the way to where we are, where our DNA is, and then how it would escalate from that point further on. That means we can actually locate where we are in the universe and continue our thought process no matter what happens to us using quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement takes a gluonic transition and continues that. That's how it's able to register a subatomic particle spin variation. These are my own theories. My name is Johnny Taylor Jackson. Thank you for listening.